Yo, what's up? Sean G here, May 25th, 2025. Welcome to the podcast Soul. Make sure you subscribe. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and do me a favor and share it. Don't forget to go follow me on the Podcast with Soul on Spotify, the Podcast with Soul on Instagram. Today, we're going to be talking about the civil case brought against Puffy and 24 other defendants. From Harve Pierre to Sony Music Group to Interscope Records, Diageo Americas, Geffen Records. She sued everybody, and she's seeking $112,500 in damages. This case was filed September the 10th, 2024. This is 10 months after Cassie filed her civil suit, where she obtained a settlement of, that we know now, $20 million. Cassie's case was also filed as a civil complaint in the Southern District of New York. Dawn's case, Dawn Richard, also filed her civil case, case number 24-6848. You can pull it down online. All you got to do is go into the search engine and type in Dawn Richard civil suit, and it could come up. This is available. This is public information. You could also pull this down on Pacer. Now, in this, I just read this. It's a 21 count complaint. 21 count complaint in civil court against Puffy and 24 other entities, corporations, individuals. Page 54. This is page 54 of her complaint. Ms. Richard prays that this court enter a judgment against the defendants herein and any other defendant who may later be added to this action for a money judgment representing compensatory damages, including but not limited to consequential damages, lost wages, earnings, royalties, publishing, touring and promotional income, and non-economic damages and all other sums of money, together with interest on those amounts, for money judgment for mental pain and anguish and severe emotional distress, for restitution, for disgorgement of all sums unjustly obtained from plaintiff or, inured to benefit of defendants, and for civil penalties and punitive and exemplary damages according to proof. Now, I just read this entire complaint. It's a 55-page document. In it, Dawn Richard alleges that Puffy made sexual advances at her, that he groped her, that he grabbed her butt, he grabbed her breasts, he detained her against her will, that he trafficked her. She also mentions several times in here where she visually saw Puffy assault Cassie. She says she saw Cassie get assaulted by Puffy in the company of other music executives, even Jimmy Iovine, who else she said? Neo, Usher. This was at the, this was when Puffy was trying to sign his new deal with Interscope. Dawn Richard also alleges in here that she saw Puffy hit Cassie with a frying pan, a skillet of eggs, grab her by the hair and drag her up the stairs. She alleges over and over how he is violent toward women. He hold on, y'all. My allergies is acting up. Hold on. Stay right there. Don't go nowhere. Stay right there. Stay right there. Don't hang up. Gotta blow my nose, man. She alleges, hold on a second. She makes all of these allegations. You know, if they're true, you know, I don't know, we'll see. But she testified, if you know, I've been going into Manhattan and I've been covering the criminal trial just about every day since Cassie testified. And Dawn has come on the stand. She was direct examined by the government, and then she was cross-examined by Nicole Westmoreland out of Atlanta. And I'm going to do another video on that. I might do it today, but maybe not. In her complaint, this is page number 2 of 55. She says that Puff did an interview with the USA Today. His nickname was Puff because he had a temper and was known to huff and puff when he was angry. Over decades following his rise to fame, Mr. Combs' star-studded, larger-than-life persona overshadowed his vicious temper and pervasive acts of violence toward those in his inner circle, specifically women. He talks about he's seen Puffy assault Cassie. His persistent abuse included choking and strangling Miss Ventura, striking her with his hands and with objects, slapping her, punching her, and throwing items at her, including a scalding hot pan. Dawn also says that Puffy threatened her life. Mr. Combs learned of her efforts. Dawn was trying to help Puffy. Dawn was trying to help Cassie get out of the relationship with Puffy. Puffy found out, and Miss Richard, Dawn Richard, said that Puffy approached her when he learned of her efforts to help Miss Ventura and became enraged, threatening Dawn Richard's life with statements such as, "You want to die today? I make niggas go missing, and I end people." This is all in Miss Richard's complaint. She talks about how for nearly a decade, Puffy manipulated Mrs. Richard with mantras that submission to his brave demands was necessary for her career advancement, instilling in her the belief that such abuse and exploitation were required for female artists to succeed in the music industry. It was not until Cassie Ventura's bravery in coming forward that Miss Richard realized her own personal suffering was tied to the many years of abuse by Puffy that had become normalized for her. Here it lists all of the defendants, starting on page 3 of 55, 15, I'm gonna give you the exact number, 21, she's sued 21 people in this complaint and corporations. Dawn Richard talks about in 2004, she was selected to participate in season 3 of MTV Network's reality television show, Making the Band. Miss Richard appeared in season 3 and season 4, Making the Band, which first aired in 2005, and in season 5 of Making His Band, which aired in 2009. Now, this is what's pretty interesting, and this is what I didn't know about this girl. People were telling me about her, but I didn't know who she was until she came to testify in court. Danity Kane's first album sold over 4 million copies. Damages to Miss Richard for unpaid salaries was estimated at $1 million. Danity Kane's second album, Welcome to the Dollhouse, sold over 2 million copies. Damages to Miss Richard for unpaid salaries and royalties are estimated at $500,000. Damages on unpaid wages for touring on over 100 dates. Miss Richard with Danity Kane are estimated at $3.3 million. So I think I got this wrong. She's actually suing him for more than that, because this is coming up to 3.3. And then let's keep it going. This is Dawn Richard in her complaint alleging domestic violence of Puffy against Kim Porter. On one occasion, in or around 2005, during the first season of making of the band 3, Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs' ex-partner and mother of 3 of his children, Kim Porter, leaving Mr. Combs' recording studio in tears with visible facial injuries, including a lacerated lip. Realizing that Mr. Combs was capable of committing acts of violence against women, caused Miss Richard to feel deep apprehension and fear that Mr. Combs could one day physically harm her. Miss Richard was present when Mr. Combs was introduced to Cassandra Ventura for the first time, which is Cassie, which was around 2006. Here, Dawn Richard describes the attitude of Puff and the atmosphere the day that Puffy met Cassie. Supposedly, Dawn Richard, on page 10 of 55, she was there. The first meeting between Puffy and Miss Ventura, in the document, they're saying Mr. Combs, I'm saying Puffy. The first meeting between Mr. Combs and Miss Ventura was the first time that Miss Richard was in Mr. Combs' presence without a camera crew filming. Observing Mr. Combs behave in such an intimidating and predatory manner the first time that they were off camera made Richard feel deeply apprehensible. She goes on to say that while she was working with Puff, with making the band 3 and Danity Kane, that Puffy would say things to them like, you bitches don't want this, y'all are not hungry enough, I'm paying you bees to work. The demeaning behavior gradually undermined Miss Richard's confidence and contributed significantly to her growing feelings of insecurity and fear of reprisal from Mr. Combs. Page 11, paragraph 53, Dawn Richard. In a further assertion of power and dominance, Mr. Combs insisted on holding meetings while dressed only in his underwear. On one occasion in 2008 at his Miami residence, Mr. Combs emailed Miss Richard directing her to meet him in the living room. When she arrived, he was wearing only his underwear. Miss Richard asked Mr. Combs to put clothes on, but he refused, stating, "This is my fucking house." Mr. Combs then conducted a meeting lasting approximately an hour while dressed in his underwear, causing Miss Richard to feel violated and embarrassed and amplifying her feelings of powerlessness. So these are the things that Dawn Richard is alleging in her complaint, and she's suing Puff. Excuse me, y'all. Still allergy season here in Jersey, man. This is the part, and this comes up, this part, Dawn Richard filed this lawsuit in September 2024, September the 10th. This is where she talks about the incident with Cassie cooking Puffy some eggs. On the first day of recording Dirty Money's album, The Last Train to Paris, Miss Richard and Miss Harper, who was the other member of Dirty Money, arrived at Mr. Combs' home and waited in the kitchen where Mr. Combs' girlfriend, Cassie, was frying eggs for him. Miss Richard observed Mr. Combs come down the stairs looking high on drugs, enter the kitchen, approach Miss Ventura, and scream, "I've been asking you for my shit. I can't stand you, bitch. You never do it right." Mr. Combs pushed Miss Ventura against the wall and choked her, then picked up the scalding hot pan of eggs and threw it at her, causing her to fall to the ground in a fetal position. Cursing and screaming, Mr. Combs dragged Miss Ventura up the stairs. Now I want y'all to pay attention to that point because I'm going to come back and we're going to revisit that. Here, Dawn is alleging Mr. Combs brought Miss Richard and Miss Harper into the recording room at his studio, locked the door and dimmed the lights, and gave each of them flowers. This is after the incident with the frying pan with Cassie cooking his eggs. Mr. Combs went on at length stating, "This is normal. This was just a lover's argument where no one was hurt. This is what love is. I'm giving you an opportunity. If you want to make it, you'll shut your mouth. If you say anything, there will be consequences." Mr. Combs further warned that people end up missing. Being threatened while locked for over 20 minutes in a small enclosed space with Mr. Combs after observing Mr. Combs violently assault Cassie the day before, Miss Richard was terrified and genuinely believed that Mr. Combs would follow through on his threats. In or around 2009, after the Soul Train Awards in Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Combs flew Miss Richard and Miss Harper to his house in New York on his private jet for an after party. There were many well-known celebrities at the after party, and copious amounts of illegal drugs were openly consumed. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs had arranged for dozens of young women and girls, some of whom appeared to be underage, to be transported to the party. The women arrived wearing little to no clothing and were given drugs and alcohol. Many of them appeared lethargic or passed out, while Mr. Combs and his guests performed sexual acts on them. So all of this right here is laying the groundwork, and I got to do Cassie's case. All of this is laying the groundwork for the government's criminal case against Puff. Puff was arrested in September 2024, so this case gets filed right around the time Puffy flies from Miami to New York to self-surrender, but they don't let him self-surrender, they arrest him in public so that they can justify not giving him a bail. At this party, Mr. Combs repeatedly said things like, "This is a buffet, enjoy yourselves. This is what we do, this is how we party." Miss Richard felt shocked and terrified at the sight of Mr. Combs and his guests violating incapacitated young women and implored Mr. Combs' personal assistant, Capricorn Clark, to allow her to leave. Mrs. Clark insisted that Miss Richard wait 15 minutes for Miss Clark to make it make sense. Miss Richard experienced feelings of panic and being trapped against her will. So what Dawn Richard is alleging there is that she wanted to leave the party, but Capricorn Clark, who's an employee of Puff, right, is telling her to hold up, wait a minute, let's not leave just yet. Let me make it make sense. Let's give it some time. And as a result of this is where the RICO case where the government is attempting to support their RICO case by saying that Puffy's employees assisted, aided and abetted in this particular instance, holding Dawn Richard against her will, right? That Puffy's employee is acting as a co-conspirator in the RICO, and this allows them to expand the scope of the RICO, not just being against Puffy, just one person. At Mr. Combs' drug-fueled parties, his guests, including Ms. Richard, were required to surrender their cell phones upon entry. Mr. Combs kept the doors locked and guarded by security personnel, making it impossible for Ms. Richard to leave without alerting Mr. Combs that she had done also. Mr. Combs hired police officers to attend his parties, sending a clear message to guests that his influence extended to law enforcement, creating a climate of fear and a tacit warning that reporting him to the authorities would be unacceptable and futile. On many occasions, Mr. Combs had parties in Miami, Florida at his residence that lasted several days. One of these parties, Ms. Richard witnessed Mr. Combs openly stating that he had arranged for busloads of young exotic girls, such as mixed Black and Asian, Indonesian, and albino. Ms. Richard observed inebriated young girls being sexually violated by Mr. Combs and his guests. In a state of panic and terror, Ms. Richard fled to the bedroom Mr. Combs had insisted she stay in and barricaded the doors shut with furniture. On the first of several occasions, they observed Mr. Combs assaulting Cassie Ventura. Ms. Richard and Ms. Harper spoke with Cassie to support and encourage Ms. Ventura in escaping her abusive relationship with Mr. Combs. Every time that Ms. Richard and Ms. Harper tried to intervene, Mr. Combs learned of the conversation and became irate. And Mr. Combs screamed at the women, "Y'all bitches don't get in my relationship. Don't tell my bitch what she needs to be doing. Y'all make money and shut the fuck up. I end artists. I shelve careers. You could be missing. You bitches want to die today?" Among other threats. This is what Dawn Richard is saying that she heard Puffy say. These are the things that she's saying that she saw. And this is all in a legal federal civil complaint filed against Puff by Dawn Richard, suing for money. Bad Boy was paid $50 million in exchange for Bad Boy's future releases distributed through Interscope. In doing so, Mr. Combs intended to capitalize on Interscope's significant resources and enhance the promotion and sales of Bad Boy's release, including DIDDY, Dirty Money's upcoming album. In the weeks and months leading up to Bad Boy Records' deal with Interscope, Mr. Combs had frequent meetings with producer and then CEO of Interscope, Jimmy Iovine. On one such occasion, Combs hosted a dinner at a West Hollywood, California restaurant, which Ms. Richard and Ms. Harper were required to attend. Among the guests at the dinner were celebrities like Neo and Usher, as well as Mr. Iovine. At the dinner, Mr. Combs and Ms. Ventura had an argument. In front of the dinner guests, Mr. Combs hissed at Ms. Ventura in a screaming whisper and forcefully punched her in the stomach, causing her to double over in visible pain, crying. Even after Jimmy Iovine watched Mr. Combs commit a violent assault in front of numerous high-profile witnesses, the Bad Boy Interscope deal took place and remained in effect, providing Mr. Combs with immense financial rewards and enabling him to commit further acts of violence without fear of repercussion. Watching Mr. Combs openly assault Ms. Ventura in front of Mr. Iovine and various celebrities, and observing that other powerful music industry representatives were complicit in Mr. Combs' behavior, amplified Ms. Richard's fears that Mr. Combs could one day harm her and that his actions would be accepted and normalized by everyone surrounding him. Now, Dawn Richard talks about Puffy making Dawn Richard and Mrs. Harper, who was the other member of Diddy Dirty Money, come to the studio, work 36 hours, 48 hours straight. She's alleging that he wouldn't let them eat. They couldn't go to sleep. They couldn't get nothing to drink. They would be dehydrated. She once had to go to the hospital as a result, and that this was forced and coercive labor. Mr. Combs regularly left the studio and required Ms. Richard and Ms. Harper to stay and write verses to songs. Occasionally, Ms. Richard tried to leave to get something to eat or to go to her hotel. When Ms. Richard tried to leave, Mr. Combs would call and demand, "Where the fuck are you? We have an album to make." Mr. Combs frequently made threats, especially if they asked for food or rest, stating, "You're a bitch. I don't want to see your fucking face. I make niggas go missing. I make things go away." Ms. Richard and Ms. Harper begged for food and rest breaks, but Mr. Combs refused, making statements such as, "Absolutely fucking not, and this is what it takes to be great." Ms. Richard continued to work nonstop, transitioning between studio, rehearsals, workouts, and back to the studio. She became severely dehydrated and experienced chronic stomach cramping from being undernourished and excessively thin. On numerous occasions, she told Mr. Combs that she was not feeling well. He called her lazy and dismissed her health concerns, instilling in her further apprehension of communicating her needs. In and around the summer of 2010, Ms. Richard experienced abdominal pain, swollen glands, and a fever. She was hospitalized and diagnosed with arthralgia, joint pain due to overuse, sprains, tendonitis, and infection, anemia, and a low white cell blood count. Ms. Richard presented Mr. Combs with her medical records, specifying that she needed to emphasize eating well and being adequately hydrated and getting adequate rest. But Mr. Combs ordered her to report to the studio the next day for another multi-day recording session. Despite Mr. Combs' violence and threats and misogyny, Diddy Dirty Money experienced significant sales of records, selling 2 million copies of one single, 500,000 copies of another in the United States, and 5 million single copies in Australia. Ms. Richard's unpaid wages and royalties are estimated at $1.2 million. Ms. Richard's unpaid touring wages are estimated at $350,000. Mr. Combs was paid approximately $250,000 per Ciroc appearance. Mr. Combs did not compensate Ms. Richard nor Ms. Harper for these appearances other than just $5,000 each on a handful of occasions. Ms. Richard was never compensated for the extra time she spent fulfilling Mr. Combs' promotional contracts, including the Ciroc and Diddy Beats campaign. Over time, Mr. Combs was paid $6.25 million for 25 Ciroc shows that Ms. Richard was required to attend. Following each show, Ms. Richard and Ms. Harper approached Mr. Combs to inquire about their insufficient and sporadic payments. Ms. Richard estimates her losses from the Ciroc campaign promotions totaling at least $1,562,500, or $1.6 million. Between 2009 and 2011, throughout Diddy Dirty Money's recording process, rehearsals, and performances, Mr. Combs reportedly ordered Ms. Richard to strip down to her underwear. Often while they were recording in the studio, Mr. Combs would hold parties where he would invite young men and women who were often scantily dressed and appeared underage to use drugs and engage in sex acts. She talks about Puffy used to advance against her, make sexual advances. They were doing a concert over in Glasgow, Scotland. And this is what Dawn Richard says that she saw when she was in the UK with Puffy performing for Diddy Dirty Money. On their last night in Glasgow, let me read this part. In or around October 2010, Diddy Dirty Money performed in Glasgow, Scotland, where Mr. Combs engaged in overt sexual advances toward Miss Richard. On numerous occasions when Miss Richard exited the dressing room fully styled, Mr. Combs looked at her approvingly and smacked her butt while making comments such as, "You're looking good. Okay, Dawn, okay. I see what it is," in a flirtatious tone. Each time, Miss Richard moved away and asked him not to touch her, but Mr. Combs regarded her request. On their last night in Glasgow, Miss Richard witnessed Mr. Combs and several other males gangbanging Mr. Combs' female assistant at the hotel pool. Miss Richard immediately left and went to her hotel room. On the flight back to the United States the next day, Miss Richard asked Mr. Combs where his assistant was. Mr. Combs replied, "I don't give a fuck where that bitch is." Miss Richard later learned that Mr. Combs had taken his assistant's passports with him to the United States, leaving the assistant stranded in the United Kingdom. When Mr. Combs would require Diddy Dirty Money bandmates to stay at his residence in Miami, Miss Richard would barricade herself inside her room at night, placing heavy furniture against the door because she feared being harmed in her sleep. Here she talks about one time they were going to appear on Saturday Night Live. Dawn Richard thought that Puffy was going to send them car service to pick them up to bring them down to Saturday Night Live. They called Puff, or he called them and said, "Where the fuck are you bitches? You bitches don't want to win. You don't want this. I'm so tired of y'all." They were like, "Are you going to send us a car?" And he told them to take a cab. At the Saturday Night Live rehearsal, Puffy gets into it with Dawn Richard and Miss Harper, and Miss Harper states that this is what she says. Mr. Combs' facial expression shifted as he stepped towards Miss Richard, raised his arm, and swung his fist toward her face. Believing that Mr. Combs was going to hit her, Miss Richard braced for the impact. Before Mr. Combs could strike her, Mr. Combs' bodyguard grabbed her, escorted her out of the studio, and forced her into the Bad Boy Records Bentley that was parked outside. Mrs. Harper ran after Miss Richard, and Mr. Combs' bodyguard closed and locked the Bentley's door with both women inside. Inside the vehicle, Miss Richard realized there were no interior door handles to let herself out, and that they were locked inside with no way to escape. Miss Richard's belongings were in the studio, but she was able to call her father from Miss Harper's cell phone. Miss Richard relayed to her father what had happened and that she needed help and feared that she would go missing. Dawn Richard's father, drives from Baltimore to New York to confront Puff. Puffy supposedly tells him, "Yo, before you start coming to confront me, think about your family." and think about your daughter's career. And this is the crux of her complaint. She has 21 counts. Violation of the victims of gender motivated violence, Combs' physical and sexual assaults, harassment, and unlawful imprisonment of Dawn Richard in New York City constitutes a crime of violence against Dawn Richard, is a crime motivated by gender. Sexual assault, second count. He intended and did cause harm and sexually offensive contact with the person and placed them in an imminent apprehension of such contact. Third count, forced labor. Defendant knowingly obtained labor from plaintiff through threats of serious harm, physical restraint, and other means of coercion. Defendant's continuous death threats and coercion, Puffy's continuous death threats and coercion prevented Dawn Richard from asserting her rights. Fifth charge, sex trafficking. Mr. Combs, one of the most prominent musical artists and producers in the industry, recruited and enticed Dawn Richard by initiating a professional relationship with her and inviting her to join Diddy Dirty Money. Mr. Combs, through a pattern of coercion, threats, and display of brutal violence, caused Dawn Richard to engage in commercial sex acts. Mr. Combs used force and fraud to coerce and entice Ms. Richard into commercial sex acts. Mr. Combs did so by making threats of career derailment and promises of career advancement in exchange for Ms. Richard's acquiescence to Mrs. Combs to Puffy's sexual batteries and assaults. Defendants, Puffy's continuous death threats and coercion prevented Dawn Richard from asserting her rights. Dawn Richard is a victim of trafficking. Seventh charge, assault. Puffy committed an assault against Dawn Richard because he intentionally placed Dawn Richard in reasonable apprehension of imminent harmful or offensive contact, and Dawn Richard reasonably feared immediate bodily harm as a result of defendant's conduct. Puffy's continuous death threats and coercion prevented Dawn Richard from asserting her rights. Eighth charge, battery, sexual battery. Puffy committed a battery against Dawn Richard because he intentionally engaged in unlawful, intentional, and offensive touching or application of force to Dawn's person. Mr. Combs repeatedly and without consent touched Ms. Richard's body, including her butt and her chest area. At the end of the complaint, Puffy's continuous death threats and coercion prevented Dawn Richard from asserting her rights. So after every charge, Dawn Richard's attorneys puts that in there. The ninth cause of action, false imprisonment. Mr. Combs and Ms. Pierre falsely imprisoned Dawn Richard in New York, as alleged in this complaint, by subtly and without provocation, willfully and maliciously falsely imprisoning Ms. Richard against her will in Puffy's corporate vehicle for over 2 hours. Puffy's continuous death threats and coercion prevented plaintiff from asserting her rights. 10th cause of action, false imprisonment. Puffy falsely imprisoned Ms. Richard in California. These charges are in California and New York, as alleged in the complaint, by demanding under false pretenses that Ms. Richard appear for work and subsequently, willfully and maliciously, falsely imprisoning and threatening Ms. Richard in Mr. Combs' home studio against her will for over 20 minutes. Puffy issued a clear retaliatory threat of future injury and bodily harm to plaintiff, underscoring the intent to both control and silence Dawn Richard to Puffy's crimes. Puffy's continuous death threats and coercion prevented plaintiff from asserting her rights. 11th cause of action, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Sean Combs and Harve Pierre's conduct, which included abuse, death threats, sexual assault, false imprisonment, deprivation of basic necessities in the workplace, non-payment or underpayments, and labor violations, was extreme and outrageous. Puffy's continuous death threats and coercion prevented Dawn Richard from asserting her rights. 12th cause of action, sexual harassment. Sean Combs and Bad Boy Records discriminated against plaintiff based on her gender. Same thing with the death threats. 13th action, Sean Combs and Bad Boy Records discriminated against plaintiffs based on gender. That, which one? This one is in 13th. 12th. Here she's saying she was subjected to intimate parts, unwanted touching of intimate parts, sex trafficking and sex acts, hostile work environment. 14th cause of action, retaliation in New York, retaliation in violation of New York State human rights law. 15th cause of action, hostile work environment. Combs and Bad Boy subjected Dawn Richard to sexual harassment on the basis of her gender in violation of California government code. 14th cause of action, defendant Sean Combs and Bad Boy persistent denial of prominent or continuing singing, writing, and performing roles as to Dawn Richard constitute adverse employment action. 16. Defendant Sean Combs and Bad Boy Records discriminated against plaintiff on the basis of her gender. Defendant's continuous death threats. 17th cause of action. Mr. Combs required Ms. Richard to perform and attend numerous promotional events as Diddy Dirty Money, including later overnight parties when she was not under contract. He used her image and persona without her consent. Defendant's continuous death threats and coercion forced Dawn Richard from asserting her rights. Copyright infringement. Supposedly, Dawn Richard wrote a song called Deliver Me, and Puffy never gave her credit for it, publishing, and later sold the publishing to Sony, and she didn't get any money out of that. That's a part of her complaint. 19th cause of action, breach of contract. Dawn Richard was promised transportation to and from venues, adequate meals, rest and sleep, medical care, and safety from a hostile workspace. And she says she didn't get any of that. Almost done, y'all. 19. Defendant's continuous death threats and coercion prevented plaintiff from asserting her rights. 20th cause of action, breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. Puffy did not pay Dawn Richard her salary as agreed. Defendants did not pay plaintiff's royalties and extraneous promotions in any instance. 21st cause of action, fraud, intentional misrepresentation. So I think in total, she's suing Puff. I think it's for over $5 million, man. Because it's $3 million. I'm gonna get it right. I gotta figure it out. But this is Dawn Richard's criminal case. Okay, this is available. This is public information. You can get this online on Pacers.com, or you could even go and pull it down off of Google. And stay tuned, because tomorrow I'm gonna upload the video of Dawn Richard's direct examination and cross-examination on the stand at the criminal trial. Sean G, peace.